Have you given any thought to contributing to the melt? It's easy to do. Just click the Patreon link in the episode notes, and for as little as $3 a month, you can get access to bonus episodes, early access to regular episodes, and you can also participate in monthly Zoom meetups. It helps to keep the magic happening here at the Melt. So I encourage you to karmically entangle yourself with the Melt today by subscribing monthly for less than the price of a container of goatee wax, or a prosthetic pinky, or a half stick of DMT butter, or an inflatable casket, or the shrunken head of an Atlantean supermodel, or a woolly mammoth's merkin, or a crystalline replica of Baba Yaga's hut, or a capsule of Sasquatch dander.
This is Hunter Muse.
And this is Chris Snipes, and you are listening
to The Melt.
I'm sure that you've seen the cartoons of today's guest, JimBob, if you move within certain circles of social media. Circles that tend to include people who question the mainstream narrative. People that have a sense of humor. People who tend to have the ability to see beyond the veil of the theatrics, of the drab everyday goings-on of the masses of people who seem to find contentment in accepting what they're told, absent of self-reflection. His cartoons often take on complex issues by boiling them down to their absurd essence in one frame. His meme-friendly delivery is absolutely conducive for a time where there seems to be an abundance of lunacy. We asked him on the Melt to talk about his art, these kooky times, and coming out of the other end of all of this with anything remotely resembling sanity. Hunter starts off the conversation by asking JimBob how he got started as an artist.
I was always drawing ever since I was a kid. I just didn't know what to say. And I think that's the artist's biggest hurdle, is like, even if you're really good at something, which my drawings don't necessarily display technical superiority. If you don't have anything to say, it's almost like it's like you have a muzzle on. And so I started, when I lived in LA, I had voted for like Obama, I think both times. And I started doing memes, just silly ones, not about politics. I did one that went super viral. Like the first one I ever did was a Game of Thrones meme. And it was a simple reference, and it went super. And I was like, whoa, you could just draw like kind of a crappy cartoon and have it like go everywhere. And there was a little bit of me in the beginning that was chasing that moment again, almost like, there's some sort of chemical reaction I was chasing. And then I was like, wait, no, there has to be something consistent that I'm pointing to, that I could say things over and over again, not just ride some kind of fluke or whatever.
Yeah.
So I started looking at some of the things, and I started basically criticizing Obama because I had voted for him, and I was like, oh, there's a lot of war going on. I was like, I'm not seeing quite a difference between the extreme sides, at least in the political sphere, in that in that realm. And so I said something. I took his iconic image of him dropping the mic, which was used always over and over again. And I just simply swapped the mic with a bomb. And that was enough to set off all of my peripheral colleagues and associates and friends to be like, "You're making him look bad. What do you want Trump to win?" And I was like, I'm doing what I think I'm supposed to do, is criticize the person I held accountable with a vote. And but it was at that moment actually really that kind of transcended the idea of like voting or this or that. I felt like my job, my gift is to some level of discernment of something out there, and then filtering it and distilling it down into a very, if I can, the most concise point. In a way, like the way the process would be is, I'm happy if I think that I've squeezed the entirety of the concept down through the eye of the needle and got it onto one frame.
Yeah.
It's not always the case. I don't, it's once in a while I feel that I've done that. A lot of times it's a near miss or a near hit or some combination of the two.
Well, being apolitical, I really appreciate that a good deal of your stuff seems to be nonpartisan whatsoever. Like,
yeah,
it says what it says, and it doesn't need to have a side.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that space, and I call that space in pursuit of the truth, or in a love for the truth, because if you're for the truth, then you don't get to not say something or not point the flashlight into the darkness just because, well, what are you doing? You're making him look bad. People go, why are you infighting? All this infight. I'm like, so wait, me taking the piss out of Ben Shapiro perpetually, ruthlessly is infighting? In what? In where? He's not in my room. He's not my life.
In my mind.
I don't care. I don't care about that guy, and I think he should have been bullied more as a kid.
For sure. Or maybe that he is the product of bullying. I don't know.
Maybe that could be the catch. So, yeah.
So you think Obama was the tipping point for you, where you kind of went more into a political sphere and less of a commentary just on like social justice or in the world in general?
Yeah, I just kind of, well, at first it wasn't quite that drastic. I went away from sort of what I saw as just default geographic political parties, which is if you're in LA, you're either silent right winger, or or you're just default, like, oh, these are the default category. You are left-leaning, liberal, Democrat, and you don't know why necessarily. Not to say all of them don't know why, but I didn't care to ask. I was like, oh, this is kind of like the uniform you wear here, and you don't need to defend it most of the time because you're around all these people. And so I saw that as a problem, being that, a part of me, whether it's my ego or whatever, that's like, no, I think too critically for this. I'm too much of an independent thinker to feel comfortable in that, and so I started branching away from it, and I call it the safety raft away from straight up left liberalism. Democrat Party stuff is like classical liberalism and libertarianism. They're like these little boat rafts that are also just not well built, but at least you're in there and you're like, you can't call me right wing and you can't call me left wing. I'm in the middle, But then I realized, doing what I do, I can't make them not a target either. And so nobody's safe around me. I'm the most dangerous person that can't hurt you, apparently.
I love it. I have voted libertarian in every election, and I love that you make fun of libertarians. I just love it, because I feel like what you're saying is so true. Like, if you choose a side, then you have to be loyal to that side, even if you disagree.
Right.
And there's a form of imprisonment in that. In it's like a political imprisonment. And when you get, I lived in Los Angeles for many years. I was born there, and I worked in the Hollywood system. And what I saw is that there's a lot of people who are very right leaning, but it's what you're saying. It's like behind closed doors. It's all very held, under their breath, and they nod and smile when they go into these social situations, but it's not because they agree with people. They're just trying to get work.
Yeah, that it really is. That's kind of what we're seeing, at least. So that thing existed forever, even before all of this craziness that we're experiencing now. But clearly that's the leverage point for everything is can you cancel someone's income? That's where we're at now. It's like, It was always there, though. It's just that now it's got this perfect Trojan horse about it. And whether it's a social issue or, if you don't get the, an injection or whatever they make it, it's becoming more and more sort of this is the relationship I see. The more standardized or the more dependent we are on standardized supply chains and systems and services, the more leverage those things have as corporations or governments, I don't see the difference at this point, have on taking it away. And the answer, this is why I disagree with what I call authorized right wing, is that they're always appealing to the left and Silicon and going in Hollywood and being like, why are you making movies like, oh, can you believe that? Like, there's all this like, oh my God, like clutching red pearls, like these like very shiny Republican pearls with like a yellow Donald Trump clasp, and I'm like, no, like stop appealing to the people you think or the narratives you think you're asking them to change, right? It's equivalent to being in a prison cell and demanding you're shaking the bars and you're Warden, change my pillow. I want a more comfortable, nicer pillow, a more wholesome pillow. And the doors open, the gates open. You're all screaming through the bars, and I'm like, so that's kind of what I see now, and I'm like, no. Obviously, it's not an easy road, but clearly the road is less dependency. That's more local stuff. That's getting our hands dirty again. I think I direct it as toward men because I'm a man. Get your hands dirty. Figure out what it's like to make something again, where it hurts to make it. And it's painful, and people know the value because they know who made it. There's a name and a face. It's not these little Asian hands like that are just somewhere out there. Like, there's a lot more that went into all of the preconditions that led us to this moment. And a lot of people, even, who see the charade are still not seeing the problem, the actual reason, why it's working. Like, in other words, someone's like, it's, some boomer in like our American flag Crocs is like, I have a right to shop for crappy food at Walmart without a mask. And you're like, wait, is that a win?
Yeah, exactly.
They like rip it off and they put their giant flavored chemical iced tea on the counter and they storm out. I'm free. And you're like, no, this is the flowering of everything that's been rooted for many years. I would argue back until back as far as the Industrial Revolution. Like, in this weird way, even though the irony I see, we're on this technology that's allowing us to do this. That's useful. We like it. It's convenient. But there's always this other side to it that constrains us, or there's some Faustian element going on always. And people are like, well, JimBob, it's easy to just point to. What's the solution? And I'm like, I actually don't know a solution, because I think on a spiritual level, we're always in this like sort of fallen world that's always going to be left to the human, and we're always going to mess it up. And it's not cynicism. It's just that you can be free, you can be spiritually free, you could be fearless and live in a completely dystopian shit show. And that's the message I'd like to give people, is that you're never going to fix the broken element of man, and that includes yourself, but you can work on it, but you certainly can't work on other people.
Well, I always circle back to George Carlin when he said society doesn't work and we should be in nomadic tribes of 9.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty accurate. Like I think there is some number, some magical threshold number where these systems that we assume automatically should be universal. We're like, well, it's working right here, and it's actually a fallacy. Like what's true of a part is true of the whole. That's in our nature to go, well, if we just, and you just name it. I talked about this on my streams. If we just, it doesn't matter whether it's your religion or your political affiliation or your economic preferred system. We're drawn to saying if we just insert fix, then everything will be good. What's wrong with you? Even us, even the people who are like against a lot of this nonsense, who see right through it. We know the end goal. We know how far, like, long ago it was written, like, to do this thing. And by this thing, I mean this pandemic kind of paradigms thing. No matter what, you're still always dealing with, like, almost like how do I put it? When you fight the dystopian thing, it's really easy to present some other utopian answer. And so it's a trick. It's always a trick. And unfortunately, as I reveal that to myself and other people they don't like it because they want an answer, like a physical answer that fixes the physical world. And I'm like, I don't believe in that. And I don't think it's not that it doesn't mean you don't try. It doesn't mean you don't affect people around you and do the things you do to better your scenario, to increase joy and love and affection and all of that among your tribe, basically, like your tribe of 9 or your tribe of, I don't know, I'd limit it like 102 maybe, something like that. And then like do a lottery, like the old, the book, The Lottery.
Oh God, yes, I remember that short story.
I feel like we're not even far off.
Yeah, exactly. It does feel like it's headed that direction.
It was like, and that's the Hunger Games, basically. So it's not like they don't just stone you to death. They put you in a reality TV, Hunger Games meets Running Man TV show where it's just like, okay, you guys go survive. We'll be watching from the screens, but we'll actually be there with you because now they're going to have these super helmets where you're totally immersive in your tiny home, which I kind of think tiny homes are cool, but I also see how they're using that to push toward these corporate-run pod systems where they deliver your kibble to you. Yes. And I always joke that it's going to be Stephen Hawking on his on an Amazon Prime drone who's like, here are your 5 apples. And like, if you'd like to appeal, like whatever, you have to sign this contract or whatever digitally. And you're just arguing with Stephen Hawking. And he's like, don't get mad at me. Like, I didn't ask for this.
Are you familiar with any of Alison McDowell's stuff?
I don't know names very well, so probably not.
Yeah. She's talking about this stuff only like the actual reality and how it's being put into motion. Like, it's insane. All the cameras are set up for that reality show that you're talking about. And who knows? Yeah, there's probably an off-planet elite world where they're placing bets on our destinies already.
Could be. I mean, that's what Westworld was all about.
Yeah, exactly.
All they need. There's definitely this race for a mirror world where, they overlap it, and then you have a sim avatar of you from all your data that represents you, and you trust it because it's all data input. So this thing is making decisions for you, and then how like our phones, everything we've created as tools for us helped us. So we guided the input. We're the ones who put the input in and said we need the shovel for the thing that helps us because now we're in this weird moment where there's a transition happening where the thing that we built is now making the suggestions for what we ought to do, like, and how we ought to do it. And we're leaning toward utilitarianism just by way of just convenience. So like a lot of people are obviously look around you, people will comply and based on convenience. And so, actually one of the cartoons I did was like, someone's asking what the future currency is, and the other person says it's compliance. And I really see that as a nearby future where everything's digital. There is no freedom of me holding cash and going, hey, Chris, you want this represents money to value to someone else. I don't do you want I want what you have, but you don't want to trade it for a book, so here's equal barter, here's money. That's offline. That's us. That's us voluntarily exchanging stuff. Well, that you take that away, even make it illegal, then what you get is a system where all of your operations are based on the compliance and what's required of you to be on the platform. And now we think of platforms as the Riverside is a platform, all these apps on our phone are we think platform in these kind of appy, video gamey kind of things. Well, the goal of these psychopaths who think they're doing good, by the way, they want to turn geographic locations like cities into platforms. And if you do that, then the payment of participation is your data and your compliance. You remove Bill of Rights, your civil liberties with community guidelines, but at the level of city or state or even country for some of these smaller countries. So, I think that's what we're seeing in New Zealand. I think the whole COVID nonsense, it really is the stepping stone, the ladder up to this platform, cities as platforms, corporate government, some weird, I guess they're called public-private partnerships where they merge together and go, well, you deliver everything and we'll govern it and enforce it. And then these people don't need to do anything but be basically luxury communists, super automated luxury communists in a way, where it's not the kind of communism we're always thrown around with PragerU memes. It's not this old style where it's there's people lined up. That could happen, but it's not the same thing. We've never seen this before. Where the ability to standardize all systems is right there. It's not like a fantasy anymore. Whereas before, it was a fantasy because the standardized systems required a lot of brute force, a lot of man labor, a lot of consumption, where now it requires less. It just requires good infrastructure. And I'm telling you, the people in the cities, the younger generations who want things, they want their tokens to play their video game called their life, they will pay. And again, this is also where I believe it's leading, is a membership to your own life, a literal lifetime membership, where there's tiers, where you're like, well, that's classism, not like we don't have it now. I mean, I know my class, by the way. It's lower. I'm low class, and you know this because if you put me at a fancy party, with Obama or something, and even if you got me in the nicest tux, you'd know my class because I would be following around the shrimp guy, the guy with the, and I'd just be I'd be like, what is that? And everyone else would be like, we don't even look at the hors d'oeuvres.
You'd be eating. That would be
I'd just be
class.
eating. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, that was a long rant that ended with my admission to my own class.
Well, I think all of this started when we farmed out all of our manufacturing to China.
Right.
So the testing ground was swine flu in the 70s. And then you have this move to take away manufacturing. So basically you have this whole generation of people who had jobs, who had skill, and then you take away their skill, and the trade-off is now you can go to Walmart. There's no mom and pop shops anymore. Now you can go to Walmart and you can get all the cheap goods you want.
Yep.
And so I think it's been this slow incremental process that's happened. And it's people of our generation who have watched it happen, who are sitting there going, wait a second, what do people do? What's the job that you have? And if you don't have some skill, then the only skill you have is to give people likes on Facebook. That's your job.
Yeah, and it's simultaneously a demoralization tactic, whether it's I think it's purposeful, but even if it wasn't, it's just that your value, the term itself isn't just economic. It's your being, your personhood, how you express yourself and deliver not just the good that you made or the service or the skill that you transfer. It's who you are in the transaction. The good news is that all of this utilitarian, crazy symposiums, UN, Klaus Schwab dressing like, that guy who dressed like Sub-Zero's dad. Like, what? What are you wearing? And these people are fundamentally wrong about human nature. And that's the good news, that they might take it to a certain level, but it's not based on what's true for people, which is that we do value convenience, but beyond that, we value immaterial things. We value transcendentals. They can't be captured. These people want to capture them so bad. These people, Bill Gates, he's just sitting and going like, if I could just get the chemical of love isolated, we could treat it as a virus. Like, they can't do it. They can't do it. They'll never do it. Because that's God level. You can't touch the immaterial. That's like changing the laws of logic. They're in the same category. And so, in a way, you could fear it and go, oh, it's going in this direction. But when you see the truth for really, what it is and who we are as humans, we're transcendental beings. We're moral beings. They have no chance. It's impossible because their starting assumption is totally wrong. And so, there is some fight to have because we don't want a total shit show, but at the same time, you kind of let them do the thing because it's built on sand, it's built on crappy little legs, it's built on debt, imaginary money, and so I think a lot of people who see that, it at least gives them peace of mind to know, like, oh, I'm, we're transcendent. Like, we're not these things. We're not these operations, or our value that we give. This conversation, okay, we have this technology. This would still occur at a bar, maybe, or around dinner. Like, nothing stops this. This is just our secondary, whatever. This is our alternative, And so they're all wrong about it. So I'm not too worried, and I'm not too worried. But it is interesting, and it does get me pumped up sometimes because I'm just like, I'm less worried about the rulers, whoever we scapegoat. I don't even think we really know who they are. It's probably I think it might be sort of like this goat, half man, like goat demon, and he's like in Antarctica, and he's just like, and like all the people travel there, and he's just like, and they're like, yeah. So we don't want to know those layers. So I just go with go towards love and fun, and I'm lucky because I don't have to battle in the trenches in those other paradigms, the political sphere, like the Ben Shapiro sphere. Like, I get to use humor. I get to take the piss out of everything and let people, give them a little lightness, but while showing them absolute horror show. Like, I'm like holding a horror show poster, but I'm making like a funny face. I'm like,
hoping you won't notice the poster.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully these two things balance out.
Exactly. And I love the transhumanist movement, how they are, constantly trying to constrict things to the physical, like thinking that our consciousness can be turned into some fucking binary code and uploaded to a hard drive. Like, what is going to happen to the soul in that picture? Like, just waving goodbye to the little building that the hard drive is stored in. It's like, it's so insane.
I used to be super transhumanist too. Futurism.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, big time. When I first moved to LA, worked with all those guys. Helped put on events. I was with this big organization about the Accelerated Studies Foundation, all about new tech. I was into it. I swapped anything metaphysical with that. I was like, that's it. And then and I was like, wait a second. I don't make anything with my hands. I'm just like theoretically thinking of these futures that might exist, might not exist, might be a total horror show. And it's always in the future. And I realized, oh, this is nonsense. And then when you get to that stuff, I'm like, that's going to be a really funny trick that they play. They're going to be like, you guys, we figured it out. We can upload you and you could live forever. but you just have to lay down and take this like pill, or the air gun thing from that movie, like and then the Faustian trick is, according to the people who are alive, you're living forever, but not to you.
Exactly.
So you're dead. You just have a fake broken version that does like a twitch once in a while that they have to fix, and then the person alive is going, it's close enough,
Exactly. He still tells the same stories over and over again, like he did when he was alive.
Yeah, they almost got that weird like sideways laugh he does sometimes. That's good, right? But he's gone. The spirit is gone. Yeah, it's a really important distinction that it's not just the soul and the consciousness. It's people don't often understand that basic things that we take ad hoc, like information itself. People don't generally think about this, and I've only recently zeroed in on information, the concept itself. The information itself is not identical to the medium. And it's like such a simple truth, but if you don't sit with it, you'll never see how hard that hits you, because that means the word help, for instance, help. If you write it in Cheerios or you write it in sticks, the meaning itself is immaterial and independent of the sticks or the Cheerios or whatever it's written in, Morse code, you name it. Any way we transfer the information, but the information itself is never captured. Just like the spirit, just like consciousness, just like laws of logic, numbers. Numbers aren't material. People are like, oh, you're so silly. Like, JimBob, clearly those are two apples. You're going to tell me that? No, those are apples, but the two of them are not identical to the number two. That's and this goes into all sorts of things. This gets into all of their theories about like microbiology and the beginning of life. It all puts it to bed, basically, because you have to justify where information comes from. And if information is true and objective, we didn't invent it. If we did invent it, then it's actually illusory and unchangeable. But it's not, because we know, things like truth are absolute, and we can't change them, because if we argued that the truth wasn't absolute, that would be an absolute claim. And so we end up in these constant self-refuting claims of going back and forth between relativism and what is absolute. And information is one of those things. Before we argue anything, before we try to apprehend any level of truth, whether it's scientific, empirical, or metaphysical, we first assume information is real, that you are you and I am me and you're not me, and the law of identity holds true. And only from a massive amount of assumptions that are metaphysical, that can't be proven, they're just faith-based. We're faith-based creatures.
It's interesting because there's your version of truth and my version of truth, and then there is that absolute truth.
Right.
And I think what we're trying to do as humans, some of us are trying to get as close to that as we possibly can. And then you have this other force that's coming in and saying, that's not really important. Don't really worry about that. Just buy this or look over here. So it's kind of a distraction from that ultimate goal. And I think that's the eddy that we're caught in right now, is how long are we going to continue to be distracted?
Right. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and then the media comes in and scrambles all of that all together, so you don't know which fucking way is up.
Oh yeah, that's their job for sure. Like, and that there are people that most people, I believe, have a pursuit of, they want to know what's true, not just because it's useful, but they want to know what's true. Like, they just, regardless of use, because knowing the truth sometimes isn't beneficial to you in some cases.
Exactly.
So the argument some people have, I don't know, I think Stefan Molyneux may have had this argument that everybody universally pursues the truth, and that's actually not true. And it's not always beneficial to know the truth. So it's like you're in a catch. So you actually, to pursue the truth, we all have to actually have a love for the truth. We actually have to love it, because some people not only maybe don't pursue it, but there are people who actively want to flip and control and fabricate truth. They want to govern. They want to be godlike in their manipulation of what is reality. And at that level, like, first of all, if you don't know, like, if people don't see that those entities exist, I say entities because it might be on a spiritual demonic level. I'm not certain, but I know it's not strictly flesh and blood people going, I'm going to be evil today. It's like the way they see the world is that it's their obligation to sculpt it, to be like, well, I'm going to be godlike because I'm in the position to.
Socially engineer it.
Yeah, I earned it. And what's crazy is they think that's toward the good. So it's never like how we see in the villain movies where they're like, they're like, it's like Bill Gates. It's like I'm in a position to really impact the world, and this is how I do it. Like, they really believe in their position that they've been granted, that it's their job to do it, but they can only base it in, again, we're talking about metaphysical. They can't help it. They don't look at that metaphysical. They don't see the single hug or pushing your daughter on a swing. That moment is eternal, is beyond. You can't grab that even if you took a picture. That's not identical to that. No way. He's thinking, well, what works for everyone? Like, it's all utility based. It's all in the physical. Again, grab the consciousness, pull it, try to get it down into bits, put it in a box.
Quantify it.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can't. And so that's the disadvantage of those people. They lean toward that because what got them in that position to begin with is seeking material, quantifiable things, gains, or they're raised in that, in his case. And so, I don't know, like, it's like a kind of a dichotomy, because you look at it and you could be demoralized. You can go, anyone who really seeks power ends up going that direction. We're always at the mercy of these unelected symposiums. But at the same time, we're the free ones, even though we're the peasants and essentially the slaves. And that's why I know that the battle is spiritual. It's not flesh and blood. It really is of powers and principalities. It's who governs your spirit. It's not just who governs, like, makes rules. It's because there's I don't know if you ever talked to people or read letters from, like, prison, or there are free people in shackles. There are free people in single beds where there's like toilet right there, just terrible. Or even like somewhere else, like some place, some third world country, like really third world, like they're not depressed they didn't get a like, they're not trying to figure out if they're a they or a zir or a zer. These are not the issues they're dealing with. They're freer, and the irony is that the people who want to make a united, perfect world are trying to also rescue people who are actually sometimes freer than us, who have all of these things. And so we make all these judgments, like, that's why the right wing is so funny, because you'll get the Ben Shapiros and be like, yeah, capitalism saves everything, guys. It's like free market everything will elevate everyone out of poverty. It's like, is debt elevation out of poverty? Is dependency on other people's labor getting out of poverty just because you can buy something really quick? We're seeing that it's not wealth. That's not. Right. It's just use. It's just kind of like cool, but then you're like, wait, now I'm dependent on the thing that comes to me quickest.
And we consider those primitive people primitive.
Yeah.
That don't live in the same reality that we live. I started to think that it was Bunham Murray's fault. The people who were the production company for the Real World. I was like, okay, these are the people who started this hell realm that we're living in.
Oh yeah.
And then the next level of that would be like Andy Cohen and the Bravo Network.
Totally. Yeah.
Because what I think it's done is it's taught women to appeal to the lowest, basest part of their ego and their character. And I think that's the swirl that some people are in, is like, I have to be obnoxious.
Right.
I have to be self-centered and narcissistic in order to be relevant.
That's it's a great insight. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you. It's just such a really good topic.
I just think, like, when I've watched those shows as a sociological experiment, because I study sociology, what I realize is that they never talk about politics. They never talk about anything that's germane or relative to reality.
Low frequency.
It's so low frequency. It's all about being offended, being upset, and creating this divisive energy between women.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's also what you said, that lowest common denominator. Then they present it to men, and then the men feel like they're supposed to permit the women to be like that as a form of feminism. Like, oh, you should be like like an obnoxious drunk dude. It's like, that was never good to begin with. Like, so it's this weird modeling of really disturbed, like, loud men in a way, where it's like a masculine energy of, like, I thought about this a lot. I was like, even in old movies, like how people talk, not just in the movies, but like in person, there was a stature, right? And so this isn't an argument that it ought to be like this, but it is something that I noticed where a man, there was a way they stood, dressed, behaved, things they didn't do. Maybe they did them in public. There were certain places and things you would do in public or couldn't do in general. Like, and then there were also things about your own face that you wouldn't do as a man or a woman at a certain time. Like these really like crazy clowny faces, but everyone's turned into this thing, and I'm a jester. But I noticed it specifically with women who had it maybe even harder to keep their posture together. Yes. Not because men own women, but because women were seen as the solid form that kept it together. That's actually, like, to me, a good thing that's been inverted. Oh, we have to keep it together? I'm going to show you my tits now. I'm not keeping anything. And you're like, is that good? Like,
exactly.
Is it good just because it's rebellious? You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like saying, we got to tear the foundation down of that building. It's like, just because it's a foundation, just because. Not because you think it's the wrong foundation and explain why, but just because it is a norm and our job is to just shut it all down. We deserve to be drunk in public. You're like, why?
I call it the makes me feel culture.
Oh yeah, there we go.
So it's like, you're making me feel bad.
There we go.
It's always giving someone else ownership of our feelings and our reality and our sovereignty. Mm-hmm. And that's become the norm, that someone else is responsible for how I feel. I'm not responsible. You're making me feel uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
It's not I'm deciding to feel uncomfortable because I need attention. Mm-hmm. So I think that there are people that use that language and don't realize that that is disempowering them to continue to say, you're responsible for me.
Totally.
To make me feel good, to make me feel bad.
You're handing over your self-esteem to somebody else.
Oh, exactly. Absolutely. It's like a full economy. It's like, it started with just like these little, like these little moments where you're like, oh, that's an implication of something that can grow into something else. We better nip this in the bud. But now it's like, it's literally an economy. Like, it's become like an actual physical and digital world where, and don't even get me started on like how that could turn into like crypto. It's like in Bitcoin or anything else where it's just like up, like outrage crypto or like, like whatever it is. I mean, you could literally do anything, which is, I don't want to give people ideas, but to me, it's inevitable that all of that, what you just said, turns into specified currencies, like, because they already are, they just haven't been expressed in the technological format. That's doable. I don't think it should happen, but I think it will.
Yeah, well, how it's being expressed now is that teenagers are more depressed than they've ever been. We have lower self-esteem than we've ever had, because it goes back to this thing that no one is making anything.
Right.
We're all observant of other people's behavior, and we're judging our life based on a Instagram model or a Kardashian and saying, well, I have to look this way or I have to have these things in order to be happy.
Right.
So it's less about connecting with another human and more about projecting what your idea of happiness is based on someone's monetized reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been more detrimental to females because of the imagery. Like, you know, you're not going to ever get away from the reality that a woman is more beautiful than a man. and that because of that, there's an expectation. Now it gets hijacked in these current systems now, because they take what is actually good and then they pervert it into this weird, like you just said, it's basically like this weird judgment economy where it's like, then the women aren't enjoying beauty, but they're competing in this weird way, but it doesn't even win them like it would normally a mate to procreate with. It doesn't give them anything, and they need to get away from the irony is you get away from that, you feel gorgeous because you're getting the proper loving, proper context for attention, which isn't partly sexual, but it's not wholly sexual. It's actually like, respect, adornment, like someone loves you, like they love you. They don't like you. They took the like button and they put a heart on it. That's not love.
Exactly. It's so interesting. I just recently read this article in Psychology Today that's saying that women now, young women now, instead of taking a photo of, let's say, Marilyn Monroe and saying, I want to look like this, they're taking these apps that distort their own faces to a plastic surgeon and saying, make me look like this. And so the dysmorphia becomes, I have chosen this manufactured version of myself and I want to look like that. And then they're still not happy.
Yeah, I think that trend will last a little while until they really sort of lock down the foundation for the Ready Player One reality of all things.
Oasis. Yeah,
basically, like, everyone who invested in all that surgery is going to be pissed. They're just going to be like, what? You could just do that digitally? Like, they're going to be like going out in the street and be like, I'm real. That's the irony. They're going to be the real ones.
So how does your wife navigate life with you? Is she a balancing force?
Oh yeah, she's a manager. Her name's Megan. We call her sometimes Meganger. She keeps me. She notices when I've gone too far into a forget what she calls it. I go on a binge. I go on a, like, if I'm online thumb wrestling, I call it. Like, yeah, you're wrong. I'm smarter than you. I'm JimBob. I'm the smart. And then I just go and, like, too long, and then I get snappy because then I project, I transfer what the contention is here, and then you're getting in my way, and then so she gracefully pulls me out of that every time, and back to us, family, our daughters, reality, as it really is. And then, and as far as everything else, we just run this whole operation together, which is these little doodles turn into 3 books. These little doodles turn into, I'm painting 2-foot canvases of these memes that I would never expect. When I was a painter, I was like, what do I paint? And, it's got to be shaded good. And now it's just like, what? Okay. That's not up to me. Like, people are like, give me the meme of Ben Shapiro as Luke Skywalker, and I'm like, okay, I'll paint that. And so that's been a blessing. Yeah, exactly. And that's a blessing for me because it gets the weight of me needing to, like, figure out, all this planning and how to figure out what people want. It's kind of already there, and people just like, they just want me to create at this point, which I couldn't ask for a better situation for a creative person to have. I would pray that every expressionist finds what they want to say, becomes skillful in saying it, and becomes prolific in expressing it, and that is rewarded for it, and whatever that is. And so, that's kind of what has become, and I couldn't have done it. There's absolutely no way. Like, for instance, this book, this is the third book. The first book, I was like, oh, people want me to make a book. And I started working without Megan, and I was basically on Microsoft Word, like just dragging in things. And then I was like, oh, Amazon something has something. And she was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And that would have been essentially, I would have been the zine guy. I was this close to being like, what? Just, it'll be like an $11 book. And she was like, no, you have to make a good book, like a really nice book. Yeah, and I was so close. And I would have done that if I had not, if this had this culmination of what I do, was it just me? If it was just me, it would be it really would be a disaster. It would just be really, again, the guy following the shrimp around. It would be that. Yeah. So she like elevates my class a little bit.
Well, memes are such a strange way of making art. Like you don't control the distribution at all. It can appear anywhere, and it kind of has to contain its own context in a way too, right?
Yeah, and I'm seeing is, especially my stuff is used as a template, and it morphs. I've seen one meme that there's probably over 1,000 edits to it, ongoing, just never ending edit to this one meme that just keeps going and keeps going. And normal of a previous version of me, the kind of like the egocentric narcissist would be like, they're taking my work, and now I'm just like, oh, it's not mine anymore. Yeah, I drew the thing, but it's almost like a cool thing that happens that you don't have any control over, nor do you want ownership over it either, because it could morph into something you don't even agree with. So you got to be careful of, like, if you're an artist and you do a medium that's like people can manipulate, that you don't overly shut it down, but also don't overly endorse it at the same time, because it can end up in anywhere. It could show up and be like, whoa, I didn't expect that.
The only one that I've seen doctored, and not very much, is the virus is mutating. Uh-huh. And then, and then I've seen a few different things in there, which didn't seem to be yours because the type was different. It was typed in that.
Yeah, they changed the type a bunch. One that was edited, it's a guy wearing a Dark Side of the Moon and a younger girl going, I love your gay pride shirt. That turned into so many funny things. People put like the guy wearing the actual type, the words never change. That's the one that got edited the most, but the words stay the same, because the joke is you just are ongoingly making fun of, putting whatever. People put Ford company in there. They tackled every possible angle of that ongoingly. It's still going on today, where it's just someone will send me one and I'll be like one was like vaccinated AF, and it was like, I like your gay pride shirt. And people love it. And it's cool because I get to interact with, if you call it a community. I don't think communities are built based on sexual preference, but there are people who are like, who come over to my account and they're like, I'm gay and I love all the stuff you do, especially when you go after gays. And I love that. And I know that exists, but mainstream doesn't want you to think that people are that strong, that, people can take it. If you're making a race joke, they can take it. They can take it. Now, there is people who maybe go at it a different way, where it's clear, like vengeance. You could tell there's a tone, there's a frequency. But the people who are receptive and have eyes to hear or eyes to see and ears hear can see that I don't mean ill will to anybody. Despite whatever might come out of my thumbs in the comments when I'm all riled up.
Have you gotten any pushback for the reparations one?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had someone who actually knew personally from Los Angeles go, I didn't know you were a racist. And I was like, what? Racism means you think your race is superior. I'm like this weird mixed Irish, Italian Jew somewhere. I don't even know what I am. Like, I just told you that I'm low class. Like, I don't have any connection to my ethnicity.
You're a mutt.
I'm a mutt. And so I'm like, what? No, I don't think that at all. But of course, there's new terms for what racism is. It means like you can't make any generalizations about anybody. You can't make any kind of like
except
jokes.
white people.
And it's like, I can and I will. And I'll show you that it doesn't come from a mean-spirited place. And so, people went after me for that. There was this other conservative like YouTuber who was like, this is racist. And I was like, show me where in the meme it says that one race, if any, is superior or inferior to anybody. I don't think that. I think it's ridiculous. I think we're all created. I think we're literally created by a super being. And like we're the manifestation of eternality. And so it's beyond that. But you can't tell someone who's doing the race baiting thing that even if as many times as I said, I love you. I just would say that to him. I love you. Then he like tried to get me fired from my job because he just wouldn't believe that I wasn't racist. And he like
He didn't believe that you loved him.
Exactly. No, that's how you really know where someone is. If you say you love someone and in a kind, you mean it authentically, and they freak out, they're under like a spell. They're under like a demonic possession where they cannot have that because they're thriving off of some pain. They're getting to where they need to go in this material realm through their borrowed debt pain that they're using. And it's just like what you said, that reality TV thing plays all into it. It's me. I'm a narcissist. Everything's about me and my pain. Don't take my pain away. They got no forgiveness, and it's actually at that point where you realize you can't really alter. You can alter people with joy, but you can't dictate when that's going to happen. You just have to be loving, joyful, and when you're not, and I'm sometimes not, is notice when you're not and correct it, because that's where all of our power is in the joyfulness. People are like, we got to defeat this crazy dystopian shit show, and I'm like, I realized that you don't shame the people who are compliant. You have compassion for them. And then you try to make them joyful and smile and make them jealous that you have a face and they want their face back. And if they don't, you just let, you pray for them. You let them go. But the people who do notice. But they don't respond to, you sheep, you stupid sheep.
Exactly.
Well, it could be really hard to transmute that energy online, I would imagine, because there's so little context, so not any nuance whatsoever.
Right.
And everything's so easily misconstrued as sarcasm.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've tried to not do sarcasm, which is ironic given what I do in the image, right? There's some facetious sarcasm maybe here and there, but I don't think people should be sarcastic in general unless they're really in the physical space of people who they actually know. But even that, a lot of sarcasm is just a very weak form of wit, and you never know where someone stands when you're being sarcastic, and you can be really funny and witty without sarcasm.
Yeah,
but everything's turned to that.
Exactly. I've noticed, like, when I go out into the world, I don't wear a mask, and I wear a lot of lipstick, and I'll walk into a store and everyone's got the face diaper on, and I'll give them this big smile and say hello, and it's almost like their mind breaks for a moment, like they remember who they are and who they were, and I've noticed that seems to get a better response and reaction than going into that shame place. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people have this self-hatred for complying. Right. They don't necessarily feel like they're doing the right thing. They're just trying to keep their job. Right.
And the social ostracization. But every time you do that, you break that spell too. So not only you're unveiling their joyfulness, who they are as human beings, not as numbers who need to do XYZ in order to get their paycheck. They feel it in their body, in their face, and like, I mean, think about all the tension in people's faces from not smiling or seeing smile. That is, I'd rather be injected with your most dangerous common flu than lose or have someone lose. It sounds crazy, but I'd almost have someone somewhat ill with some cough than lose their ability to transfer the imagery of their face and their joy, because like that's the real contagion, is the joy. Like that's the thing they're covering. They know it. The psychopaths know it. They're like, we're gonna stop this virus called joyful connectivity.
Exactly. Yeah. So how is it in your community? How do you navigate your world?
My direct community where I live is mostly, I mean, there was a time where it was mostly compliant, but generally everybody's against all of it, especially now where most of us are fed up in this direct environment. And things like I watched the school board thing, and our community just annihilated those people. They were just like, this isn't happening. You're not putting masks on kids. This is absurd. There's a couple of call-ins that were like, but you guys need to save grandma or whatever. But aside from that, I think most people that I see that I don't really know but are in my direct living scenario are really not about it. And they never really were. They just kind of played the game until they hit their threshold. I think everyone has a threshold. And now I think the controllers are actually doing a test of what is the threshold. And they use places like Australia, they always have, as a testing ground for what the West can do, and it's a perfect testing ground. So you use New Zealand and Australia to push as far as you go. Get in your house, stay in your house. Will you do it? I have this funny theory that all of the big tech companies that wanted us on these things, mostly in the Ready Player One formatted system of life where you're in your little pod, they were pushing for that, and I think they were like, well, how do we really scare people back into their houses? And they were like, let's make everything vaccination mandatory. And they're looking, and everyone's like, okay. And they're like, wait, no. Like, we just made a lot of investment in this like secondary world, like this immersive tech world. What are you doing? And they're like, what? I'm gonna get 5 jabs. And they're like, no, we were just doing that to get you. Like, it's possible. Like, that's the funny thing about all these people and their plans, is that the reality of humans and our fallen state, our inability to properly navigate all things, has it all collapse, and all this irony happens, that maybe we don't even know or really see. That's just my hunch, but I know that happens. Like, where all their plans collapse on each other, and all these things happen that they didn't expect to happen, that went against their original plan, and then it becomes this layer of circus acts. You know what I mean? Like a, and that's kind of the analogy that I see, is like, I've always seen it as a magician. They're on the stage, and there's an audience, and we're the audience, and the magician goes, well, put on your masks, and he's spinning the thing, and the people are like, well, I mean, he's doing a good job, so they put on the mask, and then a plate breaks, and then the woke people go, the plate broke. Like, this isn't, the spell of the magic goes away, right? And the magician is like, okay, don't look at that plate, and they bring up a new lie, a plate, and the person with the mask, for whatever reason, just didn't. You showed him the broken plate. You said they broke like 10 in a row, guys. Like, he's not even juggling anymore. He's just standing there. And they're like, yeah, but still a show, though. I mean, I paid for this show. Like, they're almost like feel like they invested in the show. Like, and you're like, no, it's a show. It's a like when me and Megan do this funny thing when we're watching a movie where, if one of us goes like really authentically, sincerely goes, wait, like, how would they have gone? Some weird question, right? And the other person calmly looks over and goes, it's not real.
Exactly.
And it's like a relief and an insult. It's like a relief and like, oh, why did you take that away? I was invested in it. And so I kind of see what we're dealing with like that, where you're saying it's not real, and they're like, you don't understand. I designed this mask. My family reunion is printed on my mask.
My coat of arms.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's insane. Are they implementing any sort of vaccine passporty things there?
Not where I am. I mean, I think again, Colorado's fairly purple, but I think it's so spread out and we have too many guns here where it's like, we're just not going to do that. There's too many counties that are like, no. Like, and there's too many known ways. I don't know if you've ever seen like Peggy Hall's work. She really, in the health movement, freedom movement, she really laid out the lawful aspect. And that's really important because we know it's all wrong. We know it's psychotic. We know all of these other arguments. But when you get the lawful argument and you know what to do when it happens, you just need a couple people in each community to perform it, to do it, to be like, no, actually the mandate's not a law. That's a good starting point. Governors can't make laws. You're just using the word mandate. You have to enforce it. Do you have enough people to enforce it if we all say no? No, you don't. Let's say you show up and give me a summons with a number on it that scares me and I think I'm going to lose my house. Well, I just challenge it and go to court. And they throw it out because it's a nonsense ticket that's not lawful. Now, it takes people wanting to know that that's possible. Some people don't. Some people they couldn't wait for the Delta narrative. They were like, I cannot wait. It's like their little Friday night like S&M game that nobody knows. Like they're just like, I'm just waiting for an excuse, And I think that's what they do. And I think kind of like that's what we're dealing with. It really is almost like a massive role-playing game where it's like, do this, or it's like Simon Says, but it's slightly more perverted than that because it's messing with people's power, submission power game. And so this is unique because this particular spell that's been cast gives people the opportunity to be the victim and the hero at the same time. So they get to be the victim in one case, the hero and the enforcer in the other. It's a victim with a gavel. I mean, it's like the funniest like comic book character ever. It's like the victim judge who's like, it's like I'm a victim, but I'm going to use my power to pass the judgment on you and enforce you. And you're like, which is it? Like, and they're like, I'm not going to choose. You can't make me choose between the two. I like them both. And, yeah.
Who were you inspired by when you were a kid creatively? Like, where did you get what fed you to be creative?
I think it came from not, I don't think it came from I don't know if truthful's the word. It came from an inverted place, and the inverted place is attention. Get attention, do something drastic, shocking, shock people. And that's all I knew to do. And so I knew how to do it. I knew how to shock people in the lowest common denominator sense, like we were talking. It's almost like if there's an art competition and the person who started the competition, the teacher and the judge was like, there's going to be a competition of creativity, but there's no standards. And they're like, and you're like, well, if there's no standards, the new standard, because you can't avoid standards, they emerge, would be the loudest, the grossest, the darkest, the most inverted. And that's where art goes when you don't at least have some level of standard, I'm not saying like artists need to have total, like this crazy intention to mimic some standard always, but I think generally beauty, architecture, sculptures, paintings, the most beautiful, there was a transcendental standard people were trying to reach, and there wasn't to just make people go, ugh, that's gross, or oh, that's shocking. Like, so I think the starting point was that. I was the youngest boy in my family. I have 3 older brothers and a younger sister. A lot of it was getting attention. A lot of it was, how do I seek attention? And also, how do I protect myself from my brothers? And the way I did it was acted completely insane, so they didn't even trust what I was going to do. And I think I used that as being like a wild card, especially when I first moved to LA. It was like I was this ambiguous creature who you couldn't tell what I was going to do. And I liked that. I liked the power of, you're unsure of me and I need you unsure of me. And like, that's how I'm going to control you. And I would do drastic things. I worked for MTV, speaking of Bunham Murray and Evolution TV and all of these reality outfits. And I would sit as a logger, before, I don't even know if they have loggers anymore, where you watch the raw footage and categorize what's happening. Well, I sat in a kind of a half cubicle with 2 people on the side of me. And for no reason, well, not for no reason, for the reason I'm telling you, I shaved totally half of my face perfectly and cut my hair perfect on this side and just kept it like, and like, I would do shit like that. Like, or I like had long hair and I shaved this top totally bald, like with a razor, and just had this like, and I was good, like I was like attractive young guy in Hollywood. Like people were like, you could be like a WB Dreamboat, and I was like, oh yeah, and I was like, how about this? And so, in a way, it sabotaged a lot of things because I would just, and I'm still like that. Someone will reach out, like, like I was on, InfoWars, and I really think being on that show, they were testing me to see if I would participate in that narrative, and I won't. I'll go on as me, but I won't do that thing. That's
right.
So, and so there's these examples of me being reached out to by these different sort of like right-leaning, freedom-based things, but then they know I'm not going to compromise, I think, right away. Right. And they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to, deal with that. And that's better. It's better for them and for me because, people were like, JimBob, what's wrong with you? You could have been on like, what is like one of those like PragerU offshoot shows.
Right.
I was just like, no, because I have to. You're gonna let me, get on a show, and then you're gonna be like, JimBob, can you just lay off the moon landing stuff? I'm like, no, no.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so I think I don't know if that answered your question, but that's basically, I think, what you asked. What inspired me, but what inspired me came after realizing that was all nonsense. That's all like a protective layer of mine.
Right.
And to really get into what matters is to tell the truth as I see it. And to tell a truth, you're immediately hated. And I didn't want to be hated. I want to be liked. I was in Hollywood. I want everyone to like me. Oh, you think that? That's great. I can see that. No, now I can disagree with people freely. I don't have to hate them, but I'll just be like, I don't believe that, and here's why. And I think it's a level of maturity, and I didn't really get inspired to breathe life into my work until I became like a man. I think that was like when I became a father. As soon as I saw my daughter, it was like, oh, like there's this moment where all of the bullshit goes into a colander, and you have a choice whether to shake it or not. And some people don't. They'll gently go, no, wait. I still want all of that fucking around stuff. Like, just wait.
Exactly.
And they'll pick out little spots and they'll be like, okay, I'll get rid. No, I was like, only what is necessary for this person now in this moment. And so I think that helped because in a way that was the first truth bomb. That's like the first real red pill. And I mean red pill like truth, not like Republican red pill. Where you're like, this is the truth. Everything you thought was real, you see the bullshit immediately because that's real. Like, that's real. And so I think that was a good moment where that breathed life into, oh, now I can be honest with myself. And because if you're honest with yourself as an artist, you can say whatever you want because you've already done the hard work. A lot of people don't get to do that. I have friends stuck in LA or still doing their emo. I'm everything's it's like if all of their art had a face like emoji, it would be like
indifferent.
Yeah, totally. And it's so cliche, which is ironic because that's not what they want to be. And I'm like, oh, I see what that is. I was that. I'm not better. It's just that I want them free, and to be free, they have to be honest. And to be honest, you're going to be hated. You're going to lose friends. You're going to lose friends.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
I used to call that poop smell face.
Yeah, poop smell face. Totally. Yeah. And there's a little nostril too. Yeah. You're like,
it's the face you make when you like go to a club or you go to a show and you're in the business and you can't act like you like anything.
Yeah.
You have to like be like so disaffected and so over it all.
Yeah, you can't dance. You see people dancing, you're like yeah, that's over. That's childish. I think that maybe it was the TV that got us into this like extended what's it called when you're young, like that stage? It's like a very
adolescence.
Yeah, it's like extended adolescence where we're just always like oh my gosh, it's like we're like the daughter or son who's totally horrified by their dad dancing. Like somehow they figured out a way to make like 40-year-olds that like that kid. I don't know how they did it, but they did it.
So have you heard it all from Ben Shapiro's people or
No.
from Ben Shapiro?
No, he thinks he can't interact with that. Like anybody who questions the moon landing or questions the basic narrative, he's not going to interact with. He'll interact with authorized comedians that don't go hard at certain targets, and you could see, and that's what I kind of talk about him and make fun of him about too, is that there's clearly this tier, and if you agree to stay within the range of discourse, and it's okay, do that. I don't respect you for it, but I'm not going to be like, you should be saying this. I'll be like, no, that's what he values, so let him do that. And so, no, they're only in the beginning did like, I don't know, someone from like Steven Crowder's camp kind of reach out and go, let me know if you need anything. They do this like little ambiguous flirting,
Yeah.
where it's like, let me know if you need anything. And what that means is, let me know if you're willing to do things in exchange for money. And basically, it's like a whore. Like they're seeing who's a whore, and I'm like, and then they probably get a lot of people because someone will be like, oh my gosh, I have this opportunity to get on with Alex Jones. I'll do anything. They were waiting for me to say that in the break. They were like, JimBob, you're doing really great, and I think maybe we should set up an Alex. I mean, what do you think about that? And I was like, oh. And they were like,
maybe.
They're like, just think about it. I mean, you're probably going to sell a lot of books. And I'm like, yeah. Yeah, I'm just not moved by that. Who cares?
Can you scream a little more, JimBob?
Yeah, who cares? And I'm like, can I make fun of him?
Exactly.
Can I make fun of can I ask him why he believes something that I don't believe happened? I don't have anything against you, but somehow it's not allowed to be talked about. And I find that a little weird, considering you're unveiling all these, like, there's chimera farms. They're going to try to, all this stuff's going to happen. You're like, yeah, but I don't think we went to the moon. Wow, no, we definitely, like, why can't you talk about that?
Yeah, exactly.
Talking about, like, reptilians and stuff.
For sure. Gay frogs.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I think in the beginning there was a little bit of, like, it's like they got me on allure or something, and they were like, oh, we can't. And I didn't know what that was, because early on, I was like, why can't they notice me? Like, why isn't, the Babylon Bee and all of the ones you would name, right?
Right.
And I'm so thankful that I didn't pursue that got derailed, because now I didn't know my value then. Like, I didn't, not value like, I mean, like, my voice that doesn't rely on those platforms.
Exactly.
And some.
Well, I think if he acknowledged you, then that would maybe give him some cool or some cred that he's not really aware of, that he doesn't have.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's
a good way of putting it.
That's the interesting dichotomy. But I think the Alex Jones thing is so interesting because there's so many theories about him. Like he's controlled ops and that's why he's still alive. And I love the story that he says that he swam to that place to be where the owl is.
Bohemian Grove.
Oh, the Bohemian Grove.
Bohemian Grove. Like he snuck in there. Like they don't, it's just so absurd. And I think, but yet Joe Rogan will give him an audience and then turn around and say, Alex, I think this has driven you insane.
Right.
Like all of this stuff
No,
that you're
there's
talking
always
about.
this little point at which they can't talk about certain things. It's, there's like I find the moon landing, for some reason, that's more taboo than being like, the Jews are doing it. Like for some reason, the moon is this like precious. I think it's because it's so generational. It's so embedded in MTV.
It's like a bedtime story.
It's just so deep. And so you're really dealing with people's actual beings, like their own idea of themselves.
Yeah.
You're being like,
it's cognitive it's cognitive dissonance.
Yeah. And so
it's too much to wrap your head around that isn't possible. And do you remember when Buzz Aldrin actually punched that guy in the face for saying that it didn't happen? And now years later he's like, yeah, we didn't go to the moon.
Yeah, totally. He's like saying it. I'm just so blown away by that Conan O'Brien clip. Conan's like, yeah, and we went down there, right? And it was like, I remember it like it's yesterday. He's like, no, you didn't. It was animation. We didn't, what you saw you associated with going. And he was like, I don't know what to say. He probably had like 3 things in his ear. 3 producers from 3 different networks.
Exactly.
Out, now, out,
cut,
now.
Cut to commercial. Cut to commercial.
Cut to moon landing commercial.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. That's the only thing that keeps me kind of going in that weird conspiratorial direction where you think you're going insane and people think you're crazy, is because it's not because I really think there might be some golden nugget I'm going to uncover and suddenly the world's going to understand. I don't think that's going to happen ever, but it's because of the resistance that, you push against something. If you didn't push against it, if you didn't delete all these things from YouTube, nobody would even think to they'd be like, it's only you doing that weird stuff that makes me go, that's a little, what are you protecting if it's just lunacy? Why let people be lunatics? It's funny. Why don't you get on stage with them? Why don't you talk about it? That would be fun. Have a flat earther and have them on a show. Like, this is America. We can do that stuff. It's hilarious. But the reason, like, that's weird to me. The theories are never weird. I could go into anything and try to think about it and try to erase everything I think I know and be like, oh, no, I'm gonna actually try to do that. Erase everything I think I know about reality. That's fun to me to just do that as a process. But when that's shunned upon and you can't do that and you're an idiot it's like, that's a weird space and it's happened before,
Well, and this COVID situation is rife with that too. I mean, oh my God, it's so intense.
Way intense.
Which, I mean, obviously sends red flags up for me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I want to look there more.
Yeah.
Well, that's what this country is founded on, is free speech.
Right,
for sure.
And you can be thrown in jail in Italy if you speak against the government. This is the country where people come and realize, wow, there's 26 other countries around the world who have used our Constitution as their Constitution.
Right.
Because that's a living document. Those things mean something. And that's why we have to support other people's rights to say crazy things. It's not because we agree with them. It's because you have a right to think whatever the fuck you want to think.
Yeah. Well, it's back to the beginning of this conversation where we're dependent on the platforms that have their own rules, and we're caught in this weird thing where it's like, a free marketer like Ben Shapiro will build your own platform, and you can't because the government funded like all of these things. They're conglomerate.
Sure.
You can't just as good as that sounds, from a principled perspective, it's not the reality we're dealing with. But at the same time, there's a small bit of truth to that where it's like don't build your own giant platform, build off small things. But as far as, I don't think we can compete with what I call, which I coined after NASA's system, which I believe is the real thing they did. The real accomplishment is they built a guidance system, and has nothing to do with their interaction with something flying. It's their guidance system that they deliver to the people of what is this reality, what is the universe, how do things work, and I think the guidance system can be shifted over to any field, any system of operation, and we're dealing with perhaps the biggest guidance system in human history, the connectivity of atomized observers and consumers, and less producers, and that's just the Pareto principle. Is most of us are going to be consumers. We're gonna faith comes by listening. So who are we listening to? Who do we put faith in? Is it the white lab coats? Is it the crazy guy who's saying it's all fake? Is it the less crazy guy who's saying most of it's fake? We have all these choices to choose from, and then on top of that, people are taking away some of the choices and controlling what the choices are on the shelf. And so there's no simple solution to get to the bottom of the information war. And I really don't. I think information's important, but like the nice chunk of topic we covered about the spirit is that, in a way, regardless of the information you can get or the information you're able to give people to kind of woke them, nothing will woke someone like a hug or laughter or joy, or to get them based. Yeah. Grounded in their given vessel. There's nothing that competes. There's no flyer or new, look at this AstraZeneca memo, they wrote this email 20 days before. That does not inspire anybody. And again, I'm guilty of it, but it doesn't inspire. It doesn't breathe life into people. And so, in a way, the whole information war, InfoWars, no, it's spirit war. It's a spirit war. Yeah. It's not an info war. Info's secondary. We're not moved by info.
No, it's eye contact.
Yeah, eye contact. That's more information about what matters to us than any portfolio. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's why the phone is such a vital piece of this, because what that's done is take away eye contact. Because now you go out into the world. I remember the shift, and it was about, I would say 2006, where I was working in a bar in New York, and I'd lived in Australia for 4 years, and everyone was texting in Australia, and text. No one called anyone on the phone. And it was like a Tuesday night. I went into the bar, and all of a sudden I look around, and everyone's looking down. That moment where you walk into a bar where there's this weird energy and awkwardness where you're kind of looking around at people, that was gone. Now I'm here and I don't have to engage with anybody. And I think that's the shift that's happened that they want to continue. Yeah. So it's really important. And I notice this when I go out in the world, even with the masks, with people wearing the mask, if you make eye contact, it really is this resonant thing where I'm saying, I see you, human. Yeah. I know you're in there. Yeah.
That's really important. I think that is really the biggest war. People think it's a fight. Get your guns and, who are you fighting? It's all us. We can break down these spells so, not easily, but it's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. And it really is. Hey, let me see your smile. Come on, you can put it back on. Just let me see your smile. Come on. They want that. It'll take maybe 2 out of 10 people to be like, no! This is the most dangerous Delta. It's worse now. You're like, okay.
The smile spittle.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, but really, most, we're humans. That's what... It's almost impossible to resist that from people. So
absolutely. So to kind of bring this maybe to a close, where do you see this we're talking about the COVID malarkey, where do you see this heading?
I see COVID as the new ISIS, which is a created, mostly manufactured boogeyman that they could place anywhere, given that the intelligence says so. The new intelligence are epidemiologists and simulators who go, there's an outbreak here. And so to them, to the people who want to take this to their logical end, it really is the smart city, the John Calhoun rat experiment of our generation, where all things are seen, all things are recorded, all data becomes the payment plan of your participation. And I think that the more complex, easier life is the smart city, what they're going to keep pushing for. All these companies want it. And some of the people want it. And then there's going to be a split to the farm, the homestead, the wildlings in Game of Thrones, who have a more difficult life, but a simple life. It's simple, but it's difficult, and you're rewarded, and you're around flesh and blood people who have smiles and laughter, and you witness death or whatever. You're not protected and isolated. So there's this isolation where you get everything you want. You get your Amazon monthly coin to spend on your arcade style life existence. And then people who just go, no, we're just opting out. I mean, it's a split. I see it going as a split. And then beyond that, they're going to introduce the Ready Player One scenario where people are in their tiny homes. They're going to push it as tiny homes, but clearly we're going to see it's just luxury prison. And they're going to have their little helmets and their little treadmills, and their participation in society will be given by logging on time hours in the secondary world. Most people will be addicted to it. They're really gonna appeal to man's, and I mean man as humankind's vices, appetites, sexual, whatever it is, you name it. People will, if you can. This is where I really think it's spiritual. Is that the irony of when, maybe in our lifetime, we'll see it's at some levels in these more advanced cultures, in cities and whatnot. The irony is when a human being can become their own god in their own mind, they have this conjurer. I bet you they'll even call it that. A helmet, an immersive helmet where you can feel pain, orgasms, pleasure, laughter, smells, whatever it is. They want to race toward that. And so the irony is when we have the technological capability of being our own god in the secondary world, the irony is the person outside of it, maybe it's you and I from the woods with old school binoculars from the 80s, and we're going, what the fuck? And we zoom in, and there are all these people like in their little like sheds that are literally connected, just laying back like dead. They're dead prisoners.
Yeah.
And someone's feeding them their inputs, but they think they're conjuring them themselves.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't care. It feels more real in there than it does out here. We're going to see that. Someone say that. And I'm going to probably, God forbid I have that with my, teenage daughter. It's like, Dad, it's, way more real in here than it is out there anyway. And I'm just like, what?
There's a Kids in the Hall movie where basically you're in a loop of the best moment of your life. And there's like a warehouse of these people, and they're kind of standing there like zombies, and in their head they're living that best moment of their life over and over again.
That's absolutely going to happen, but it's not even, they're going to live other people's favorite moments, and those moments are going to be what? They're going to be NFTs. They're going to be non-fungible tokens that their own unique experiences. Now we're seeing it. They're trying to be like, it's the new art, and people are like, JimBob, get your stuff. I'm like, maybe if it gets me my hobby farm, maybe. But I know where it's going. I'm not fooled by that. The new Banksy kind of people, they're just making trillion. They want people invested in that stuff because what else does that apply to? I mean, once you do NFT for experiences, what else is an NFT? Our entire body, our genome is an NFT. Our operations, our own unique system that's so different than all people. The entire structure can be mapped out into a digital representation. And then if you do that and a company owns it, then what then? What's now what? What?
Exactly.
What happens now? You know,
when I was on Facebook, I used to say the robot who takes over my reality is going to be super cool.
Yeah, totally. Yep, exactly. Yeah, I have this one meme that says, they're gonna turn us, or they're, what was it? It was something about robots. It was like, they want to make a bunch of, they want to replace humans with robots, and then you cut to the other person who's clearly like an NPC, and then they go, but then what are they gonna do? Because it's like why do you need to do it if you can already do it? Like why is Boston Dynamics building? Look, it looks like a human. Like no,
exactly.
That's a soldier.
Yeah,
the human robot is, like I had this crazy like concept. I'll never write it, but it's nuts. It's like the whole autism thing, like, do the shots cause it or not? Why is there a spectrum? And I had this idea that like there's these people that are trying to perfect the engineered removal of social, the social aspect, the humor, the context of humor, social cues, these kinds of things. Why? Because in a utilitarian world, you would call that, I had a coin for it, was social lag. So in a company setting, lag is the lunchroom. It's like in the office, like they're all screwing off and joking. Well, if you remove that, you could call it autism, you can call it Asperger's. But if you can perfect that spectrum, it seems to me that if they developed a spectrum, that there's actually a target point where there's a perfect little functional crossover, and you can make automatons. Yeah, thank you. Which is a weird crossover from the word too. It's like, wait, what? Like what? Why does that have to be so connected? and then so what you get is like a future where you can decide if one of your family members is going to be like the autonomous one. And so someone's born and they're like, would you like JimBob to be your automaton? Like that means they're like the worker of the house. They don't get in the way. They
total efficiency.
Yeah, total efficiency. You're your own robot. And so, the concept is like the people who invested this thing and found it, in the story, one of them was really trying to solve this problem and remove this problem. And the other, without his knowing, sold it to someone like Boston Dynamics and said, you guys don't need to build robots. This is it. You turn the human into it by removing this thing. And then there's this whole like society where it's normal to have one person in your family be this. It was a really fun thing to think about, but I realized I was too feathery of a writer. It's like too pedantic and just like I didn't know how to cut to the chase.
That's like the Stepford Wives.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. That's it. It's almost better when it just symbolizes it instead of when it's on the nose. But I do think we're also going to see that kind of reality where not only will they be like, how much of the humor do you want to remove? And they're like, I don't know. I want him to have some, but I don't want him to get in the way of him being a good worker. And then they're like, okay, do you want him allergic to meat too?
It's like the social awkwardness is the reason that we've evolved.
Right.
Is that's part of the human experience, is to have that.
Right.
And to take that away is going to make us this very monotone, one note type of a being.
Yeah. It's all going to go terribly for those people because again, you can injure someone's brain, but when enough people notice it, like again, the humanness of us, the thing that we really pursue, isn't identical to the hobby form I want. It's the experiences that I think envision happening. It's stepping in chicken shit. It's chasing some, like being like, wait, I was going to slaughter chickens, but now I feel like this moments that I can see that I'm going to be confronted with. And they have nothing to do with like the acquisition of things in a way. Like they're outer thingness. They're not in. And so all the stuff we talk about that we're all like, holy shit, that could happen. To give yourself a little bit of freedom, you just ask yourself, what's assumed about humans to believe that could actually sustain? And you realize it's a false assumption. We're spiritual, we're moral beings. We have good in us, and we're capable of evil. And so the rest is all just clutter. Really, it could be any given time. There could have been a couple of peasants similar to us, in 500, talking similar, relatively, what was similar, in the time period for them when they were like exploring this stuff and realizing, oh, it really isn't about what they're saying it's about, And we know that, and people know that. And again, your eye contact, our ability to make that connection, that's the reminder. It's not a big diatribe about the World Economic Forum and all that shit. It's, you're human. Remember it. That's enough. That'll impact them for the year. I'm telling you. We know it impacts us. It can move us to tears. These are people in fear. They want that life preserver. So, I mean, that's the best form of activism to me.
I love it.
Be human.
Yeah, be human.
That is a great note to end on, Jim.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This has been amazing to talk to you.
Absolutely.
And do you guys, because I went on YouTube, but it was mostly audio, so I didn't know if this was a transition into video.
Well,
because that's why
What I've been doing, and I might change it, is just doing video versions of interviews for Patreon.
Oh, okay, cool.
Subscribers. But I'm thinking about just putting out the video interviews too. So if either way, I will send you the link to when the audio one comes out or the audio and video version comes out.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I would say go for the Patreon and just do your highlight snippets that draw people in,
Yeah, for sure.
I love it.
Well, thanks so much for your humor and your humanness.
Oh, perfect. That's a great way to. That's what you. Yeah, I'm glad. That's the best compliment ever. It's like your drawings are amazing. Like, but what you just said, I'm like, that's what I want. That's what I want. Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. We all need it. Absolutely. Where can people find you?
I'm on my second account. Instagram took me down at 110,000, which is actually a blessing because the people who like my work actually went and tried to find me, and they were like, "What happened?" So it was actually a colander. And so Made by JimBob 2 is my Instagram, and then madebyjimbob.com is my website where you can get the pre-order for Savage Memes Volume 3. I'm printed. Volume 1 was 750 copies. Those sold out. And then I went to 1,000 because I was like, I can maybe do that. And those sold out. So now we have 3,000 copies of these, and we're already above 1,000 sold. But if you pre-order this before we send out our first batch, I made a bunch of really funny stickers and a really funny magnet. And I can't tell anybody what those are, but that's the bonus if you order. So, madebyjimbob.com.
Fabulous. Cool.
So, and that's where we can order.
Yeah, madebyjimbob.com.
Fantastic.
And where can we find where you live?
Okay, yeah. Well, I had a big argument with a vegan the other day, and he felt like he should post where I live in the comments. And so
You're kidding me.
I was like, okay, so I won't do that anymore.
Jeez Louise, he doxed you?
He did.
Cold doxed you?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's horrible.
I mean...
Well, we were just joking, but...
Yeah, I know. It's just...
Yeah.
That's the way it... No, I mean, I was actually... That was also another thing where I was like, these are the kind of things you want to happen before you get any other level. Not that I want to... Like, I want to stay pretty much... Like, if I were to choose a trajectory, by the way, it would be like... It'd be like this.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
I don't know. There's
Uh-huh.
I will sabotage this if I see it happening. I'm like,
Yeah,
nope.
exactly.
Well, you have to forgive him because he was nutritionally depleted.
He was, and I took ownership. I am really good at prodding. Like my work prods in a fun way, but I'm telling you, that little younger brother, I can really prod. Like, and so I was like, all right, I didn't deserve that, but I understand that was the result of my behavior as well. So that's the only power you have is like total ownership over what's going on. So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So now I know how to avoid that.
Yeah. Well, he has to sleep with himself at night.
Yeah,
so
he kind of
we
did.
have to forgive him.
He did that. He has to be like, oh, I am one of those people who did that.
People. Exactly.
Like he eats a steak. I post his address.
There's a hilarious statistic about people who are vegans who get drunk and then eat meat.
Really?
Yes, it's insane. It's like 70% of vegans get drunk and then the first thing they go for is like pepperoni pizza.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that's their shame.
Whoa, no, I've seen that actually in first person. And I didn't I actually didn't connect it because I always tell people I'm vegan in between bites. I'm like, I'm vegan. and it turns out a drunk one is as well.
Yeah.
There
you go.
That's really funny, actually.
Fun fact.
I didn't know that. That means that's kind of known more in the vegan world, probably. It's like this like taboo. So if I made a meme of like, I'm a vegan, and then they get trashed, and they're like, and just like, and they're just in a blanket of pizza. They don't eat the pizza. It's just.
Yeah, exactly. Pizza adjacent.
So they've got a hoof of a cow in their mouth.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay,
All right.
we'll let you go.
All right.
Go be a human.
Hey, thanks again, you guys. It was a great conversation.
Thanks so much,
Just
JimBob.
send me a link or an email when it goes up. I'll put it in my story.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Wonderful.
All right,
Okay,
guys.
take care.
Good night.
Farewell.
Bye.
Bye.
If you've liked what you've heard and would like to contribute to The Melt, there are a few ways that you can do that. The most tangible would be financially. Just click the Patreon link in the episode notes and there you will find ways that you can contribute for as little as $3 a month. This will give you access to bonus episodes, early access to regular episodes, and you can also participate in monthly Zoom meetups. Contributing financially will also help make The Melt better, pay the bills, and help to make this podcast a full-time endeavor that I can fully devote my time to and provide you with more content. Another way of contributing would be to go to wherever it is that you subscribe to The Melt and give it a favorable review or rating, and this will help it to reach more people. You can also spread the word to friends and family via social media, email, or word of mouth. And lastly, if none of those options are readily available or appealing to you, simply send your positive thoughts and intentions. In an interconnected and quantumly entangled multiverse, these also go a long way. Thank you.